practicing each week, we're really developing skills. So, the title that Jeff put in the flyer was, by Steve, was how can you put together the main practices of the different schools and traditions of Buddhism? So Vipassana, Zen, Vajrayana, coming out of Tibet and China. So people here may practice different traditions. Matter of fact, some of you may be Christians or Jews or Muslims. When I first started practicing, I went to a community right here in Hillcrest, and I was really confused because I was interested in Buddhism, but there were people there who identified themselves as Chris Boos or Boo Chris's, Christians who practice Buddhism, or Buddhists who are Christian-like. Jew Boos, same thing. Judaism was their main tradition, but they practiced Buddhist practices to enrich their tradition. And then there were Boo Jews, who were mostly Buddhist, but their tradition came out of their Jewish heritage. It was a little confusing because I thought Buddhism was maybe a separate religion. And for some people it is, but for many of us, it's a way of life. It's a set of practices and a way of thinking about the world and living in the world that if we have another spiritual tradition, Buddhism can actually enhance it. So that's why the title of this class series is really about how do we take whatever tradition we come from or we practice it. And that would also include, if you're an agnostic or an atheist and wouldn't identify as spiritual. Matter of fact, today in the United States, as you may know, the largest group of people who identify are none. No religion whatsoever, particularly among the young people. So what I teach is what's called Unified Mindfulness. And that's really what these 6 weeks are about, is a set of practices that no matter what tradition or spiritual practice you have, or that you don't have, you can use these techniques to enhance your life. And it comes from the teacher Shinzen Young, who is now almost 80, I think he's 80 years old. 50 years ago, he began to experiment with different spiritual traditions. So he was a monk in Japan. He went and spent a long time with Native Americans and their practices, different forms of Buddhism. His best friend was a Jesuit priest from whom he really learned about Christianity. But his vision was, could we come up with a system that respects modern science and is infused by modern science, and that would allow whoever is practicing to deepen their own tradition and practice. So he developed over 50 years what we call Unified Mindfulness. And what it is basically it's a system of training your attention for the purpose of comprehensive well-being. So the first week in these classes, I asked the question, why do we practice? And what was the answer? Do you remember? Why do you practice?
There's quite a few different answers, I think. It was a few different. One was awareness. And, I seen them all. There was a few different ones popped up. So.
Well, and there's, people have different reasons for practicing, but one way to sum it up is that we practice, particularly mindfulness, to be happy. It's happiness is our goal. And, last week or the week before, I was talking about when the Buddha was asked, what do you teach? His response was, I teach suffering and the relief of suffering. But today, we have a wider or broader understanding of what it means to be human. We have modern psychology and health science and human rights, political values that didn't exist at the time of the Buddha. So he couldn't have been expected to tell you and me that we should eat vegetables and exercise, as a way to practice. But we know that comprehensive well-being includes all the ways that we live in the world. And so what I would suggest to you is the reason we practice is not just to close our eyes and go in and develop some kind of inner space. It's that, but more importantly, it's to make a difference in how we live in the world. My teacher always says, you will only know if your meditation is working if your behavior and the way you live in the world is getting better. That's how you know. So the first week we asked the question, why do we practice? Comprehensive well-being. The second week, last week, I asked the question, what is mindfulness? And what came up for you? Or what comes up for you when I ask that question? What is mindfulness? Yes?
Being present, focusing on
being present, yep. What else? Yes?
Paying attention to what you pay attention to.
Paying attention, right. So that's all right. There's many different definitions. The definition that we use in this model so that we can be more precise in how we develop our skills is that mindfulness is basically 3 mental skills that we develop. Does anybody remember one of the skills from last week? Clarity, okay. Equanimity, concentration. All right, you got it, okay? So 3 skills. And, I always say, and this sounds funny, you don't have to believe a thing I say. Matter of fact, don't believe anything I say. Have you ever had a teacher tell you that before? And the reason I say that is because you don't have to believe anything. You can actually, and we're going to do it tonight, you can practice and experience for yourself whether or not this way of understanding your mind works for you. So the 3 skills that we're going to experience tonight and work with, one is concentration. And that's very simply it's the ability to choose what to pay attention to that you decide is important for you. And, as I mentioned last week, we live in a world that there's constant distraction. Social media and the algorithmic nature of digital devices, it pulls our attention. Everything is so busy, our lives are so speedy. And I was noticing in my Apple CarPlay navigation, I had choices, but the choices were about what's the fastest route, not the safest route, the fastest route. Our lives are so busy, it's very difficult to ground ourselves in the present moment. And that's why we have to train our minds to be able to choose what's important. So there's 10 things going on, and somebody who you love, particularly if it's a teenager who you may never get another chance to listen to, okay? Can you bring your attention to what's important in the moment and let everything else just be there? So that's the skill of concentration that we develop in this practice. Then the second one is clarity. And clarity just means that you can track your sensory experience in real time. And what that means is you know when you're seeing, you know when you're hearing, and you know when you're feeling. Now that may seem kind of obvious because we're seeing, hearing, and feeling all the time. There's a way to think about everything you experience in those categories. So clarity means that it's not all jumbled up, jumping from, there's a sound, oh, I'm having a thought, oh, there, I gotta go do this. That's the way the world is. Clarity is that you can really pay attention to the difference between what you're thinking and feeling and seeing and hearing. You really have that ability. And then as I was suggesting last week, that what happens when we get overwhelmed or we react, it's like all the senses come together in a bundle. A good example is, think of the last time that somebody said something that hurt your feelings. Think of that time. If you can picture it and feel it. What might have happened is that person said something, you heard it, and immediately you may have felt it right there. It could be anger, it could be fear, it could be hurt. Immediately you feel it. And then you might have told yourself, you'll hear yourself telling yourself something, a story about what that means. How dare you say that to me? That is the meanest thing anybody ever said. So that the thought is it's like feeding a fire. The more we entertain those thoughts, the more it feeds the emotion, and the more likely, and so what we hear and see and feel, thoughts, emotions, the words from the person outside, it begins to bundle together. And, that's when we just react. That's when we say that thing right back that we later regret, okay? Or worse yet, we do something physical. And it happens frequently. So the way to think about it is when our senses react, when they come together in a bundle, if we're able to separate track the different things that are going on. So in that example, as soon as I hear those words, I could just be aware I'm hearing my friend say something that really hurts, feel. And I'm hearing myself say, well, you should talk. You're a jerk. But I can be aware of that. I don't need to then react. And most of us get in trouble because we react to things that happen in the world. We don't skillfully, and even in a moment, make a decision about how's the best way to respond to what's going on. So the first skill is concentration, paying attention to what's happening. Second skill is being able to sort out what we're feeling, thinking, hearing, seeing, in that very way. And then the third skill, equanimity. It's not a term we use in English very often, but many teachers, and particularly researchers who are researching mindfulness as a cognitive science, many people believe, and I do, that equanimity is the secret sauce. Equanimity is really the skill that makes the difference. And how it's defined, very simply, is that when you have equanimity, you're not trying to push away experience that you don't like, and you're not trying to hang on to experience you do like. In a sense, you're not fighting with your experience. You're not fighting with it. And you can test this out. When you get angry, see if it helps to just tell yourself, don't be angry. What happens when you do that? You get angrier. That's right. It's like putting fuel on the fire. Or the other way is I'm just not going to pay attention. I'm going to ignore that. Pretend like it didn't happen. And then you wonder why 6 hours later you're snapping people because you're still carrying those emotions around. So equanimity is this skill that we learn not to fight with our experience. Last week I told a story I love from, I call her a Buddhist grandma. It's Sylvia Borstein. Anybody know? Some people know who she is. She's 80-some years old. Has been a Buddhist Jewish teacher for many years here in California. And she tells the story of getting on a plane. I told this last week, but getting on a plane, sitting in the middle seat, and then the aisle seat was empty. And who comes along but a young mother with an infant? And it's going to be a long 5-hour flight. Well, you can imagine what comes up. And she has this little mantra she says all day long, and I love it. I try to use it myself. May I be present in this moment. May I greet it as a friend. So she was being mindful. She was aware when the young mother sat down. She was having thoughts and feelings like, wow, infant, 5 hours, this is going to be a nightmare. But she was aware of that. And she used, that saying, may I be present, may I greet whatever comes along as a friend. Turned out that the baby didn't cry very much. She had a wonderful conversation with the mother, and it reminded her as a grandmother how important it was to be a mother and to be loving. And it turned out to be a great experience. It was her ability to not hang on to the feeling of I want peace and quiet, and hanging on to it, because you hang on to it, it's not going to happen. It's beyond our control. And she didn't have to push away this fear or dislike for what the situation was. She was just present, either pushing away her experience or pulling on it. So what? Yes.
But I think the difference when some of your friend or your frenemy calls you a jerk,
yeah,
and you get that gut reaction. But that gets around you like, okay, what's going to happen? It didn't happen, right?
Right.
If your friend calls you a jerk,
yeah,
it happened.
Yeah.
And you get that that gut feeling comes up.
Right.
And so I think the point is, so between that and stopping before you verbalize on it or say something, catching yourself in that moment, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't always help this,
Yeah.
So help me there.
Yeah. Well, what doesn't it help?
That hurt feeling, that anger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
you don't want to carry it with you, but you don't want to react on it.
well, there's some research. Research in cognitive science is changing rapidly, and with AI, it's going to really change rapidly. But there's some studies to suggest. Does anybody know what's the average life of an emotion in the human body if you don't get in the way?
I've heard 9 seconds.
Yep, that's exactly it. 9 seconds. Now, most of us don't believe that because when that happens, we're carrying it. That's the lack of equanimity. And, if you begin to be mindful of how you're fueling it with maybe a thought or just holding on to the feeling. But if we don't get in the way, it's 9 seconds, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. In Buddhism, they talk about, in Buddhist teaching, you talk about first dart, second dart.
Yeah.
And the first dart is the original wound or
Yep.
jerk. The second dart is my own mind going to town on
Yep.
why why would they, how dare they?
That's right.
And most frequently, it's like somebody brings you in a restaurant, they bring you something that is not cooked properly. How dare they do that?
I know.
Right? It's like, instead of like, could you please take this back and
Right.
cook it some more or something?
Yeah. Or
It's not
maybe
personal.
you ordered peas and you got carrots and you're not allergic to carrots. Well, maybe you just take the carrots, or maybe you don't. So equanimity, yes.
Just one more time on that topic.
Yeah.
I had a friend who would always say that if someone said something about you, you don't have to like take those words because they're just words.
Yes.
So you take them, and then that's when you start having the conversations with yourself and like make it a thing.
That's right. And that's not so easy to do. You're absolutely right. So that's why this model, and we're going to practice it tonight, we did last week, of being able to identify your sensory experience, knowing that you're seeing, hearing, or feeling, and being able to sort that out. That's the clarity. You can do that in a moment. And as you practice, it begins to be natural. That's what allows the emotion to be there for 9 seconds, unless you want to keep it. Maybe a loving feeling or a curiosity, positive states. You may want to cultivate them. So this is what we're going to do tonight. Is really we're going to really learn to note and label our experience. And again, thinking about this idea that when that person says that thing that hurts you, what's happening is all your sensory experience is coming together like a bundle, and when it's bundled, you're going to react. Okay? But when you can be mindful of it in just a moment and sort it out, Viktor Frankl, the philosopher who survived the concentration camp, has a famous quote where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a gap, and in that gap is human freedom. So that's what we're really developing in our practice, is to develop that gap that allows us to have awareness and equanimity so we can choose how to respond. Okay? And that's really what we're going to practice tonight. Yes, just.
And that gap also is the opportunity to examine it. So, for example, if someone calls me a jerk, I get a moment to, if I'm present, I can say, why is that am I doing something?
Right.
Are they suffering somehow and they're just acting out?
Right.
So rather than, I'm just not going to respond like white knuckling it and repressing the emotion, which is going to bite you in the ass.
Right.
Like taking it as an invitation to become curious about the feeling that I'm experiencing.
Right. And that may not happen in the moment. You're right there with the person. But at least you're not reacting. You're less likely to say something back that you regret. You're not going to hang on to the emotion. And then you may later really learn about them and you and the situation as well. So one important distinction, when we use the term equanimity, we're talking about our internal experience. We're not talking about what happens in the world, because people can misconstrue that to say, well, I should just then be totally chill with whatever happens. No. We've got to act. We've got to make judgments. There are bad things that happen to good people. And, if you're in an unhealthy relationship and you have equanimity, it doesn't mean you stay in the relationship. You may actually come to understand with mindfulness skills what you're experiencing, what this is about. And then you may make a decision to change what it is. So equanimity has more to do with, we don't fight with our experience, but we do have to be in the world to act and make judgments. So, keeping in mind that what we're working with is the sensory experience, and we're training these three, and the sensory experience is see, hear, and feel. 3 simple labels. And maybe we can do a tour of the senses to kind of sharpen our experience of these 3 areas. Very simply, choose an object in the room that you find interesting and just focus on that object for a moment. So that's see, call that see out. Now picture, you've all heard this from past week, picture your favorite food. And notice where it lights up. There's a place in your brain. And you can even, if you want, wave your hand where it's happening. For me, it's here. For some people, it's here. We'll call that the mental screen. That's where visual thoughts show up. So we can be aware of what we're thinking when we're thinking in images. Here is the same way. Listen for a sound in the outside world. Or sounds. So we can hear out, we can also hear in. And very simply, repeat your phone number silently to yourself. And you can hear it. Can you hear it? And you notice where you hear it? We'll call that talk space. So this is the funny thing. When I first learned this, it blew my mind. I never thought before that thinking is visual and auditory, and I can actually label it. When I'm picturing a bowl of ice cream, I become mindful when I can say "see." I'm seeing in. And when I hear a thought, I'm talking to myself all day long. You are too. We all do. You can actually label it here, and you're actually being mindful of what you're thinking. And then feel is the same way. Feel out and feel in. Feel out is just the sensations in the body. So tune in to what you're feeling in your body right now. You'll be feeling the sensations of sitting in the chair or on the cushion. You may feel some pain or discomfort. Or you may feel some pleasant sensation of relaxation or rest. And that's feel. And then we can feel in, because feel in is basically emotions. Every emotion shows up in the body, whether we know it or not. Okay? And one way to test that is, my silly little exercise is put a smile on your face. A silly smile like I'm doing. And notice how your face can light up. That's just a hint of emotion. So every emotion shows up in the body. And as we begin to be more mindful, we can actually be aware of it. And using a label like feel helps us point to it and be aware of it. So to keep things simple, we just use 3 labels: see, hear, or feel, for experience in the outside world and also our internal world. Okay? Any questions about that before we do some more practice? Okay. And again, you don't have to believe this. Test it out for yourself. Check it out and see if it's true. So this week, the question is, how do we practice? And, one of the rules of thumb is there is no one way to meditate. There's no one way. And so I'm not going to tell you there's a right way and a wrong way. There's a reason, just like, there's different cultures, different languages in the world, different food. People are different. So groups of people develop their own way of experiencing being human. And that's true of our minds too. Our minds work basically the same, but people need different ways to practice. So you need to find what works for you. Again, if you buy the goal of human flourishing, well-being, then you need a practice that helps you become that. So when I ask the question, how do we practice? I'm gonna give you some techniques that can help you be more mindful. But it's by no means by saying that this is the only way to practice, okay? And this community is such a great example of that. Unlike other Buddhist communities where if you go to a Zen temple, they're going to teach you Zen. And they're probably going to tell you, don't do certain things, okay? do this. And that's okay. And if you go to if you go to a Cambodian temple down on 30th Street, they're going to probably teach you that form of, Theravada Buddhism, and they'll teach you certain ways to do it. One of the things that's unique about Dharma Bums, and it was Jeff's vision a long time ago of creating a space where people could come and choose what forms of practice fit for them to become, well, as he said to me recently, and I think he said it to all of you, if people come and they become kinder and happier, then it's the mission of this community. Not that they come and become Buddhists, okay? I mean, if it fits for you, that's great. But more importantly is we develop these practices to become happier, healthier human beings. So when I ask the question, how do we practice? This is one way. And the answer in this system of unified mindfulness with using see, hear, feel, our sensory kind of gym, with developing the muscles of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. The way we practice is by what's called noting and labeling. And Robin and I were talking before about how when you begin to do you use these tools, you may start to feel like you're really more mindful in every area of your life if you practice. So I'll define each of these, but more importantly, we're going to practice them. And you can get a sense of what this is about. So just as a context, sometimes more conservative Buddhists will challenge this model and say, well, it's heavy on cognitive science and it's heavy on sensory experience, but where's the Buddhist? Where's the Buddha Dharma? It's here. It's in the model. And matter of fact, this model comes out of Buddhism. This practice of noting and labeling was developed by a monk in the early 20th century, Mahasi Sayadaw, who was a Burmese teacher, Buddhist teacher, a monk, very prominent. And what he observed, he was sitting in his monastery, and meditation, we wouldn't be here doing this if he had not come along. Because in Buddhism, the monks meditated, but the people did not. So monks did not teach people to meditate. Meditation was reserved for those who were just monks and nuns. Mahasi Sayadaw thought, wait a minute, this practice could change people's lives. And so he, out of the Buddhist scriptures, the suttas, he actually came up with what he called noting, and he began to teach lay people. And of course, you can imagine what happened. The really conservative Buddhist establishment were really mad at him and really fought. And yet in the West, particularly, and in the East now, it's accepted that lay people meditate and that we learn these techniques. It's part of being a good human being, actually. So we owe it to Mahasi Sayadaw that he had the vision that regular people could be transformed by these practices. So what we're going to practice is first what we call noting. And noting is just that you spend 5-10 seconds or less on whatever you choose to pay attention to. Very simply, whatever you're choosing to pay attention to, you spend a few seconds just allowing your attention to be there. Okay? So let's do it right now. In this beautiful room, there's lots of objects, and pick something that is either interesting for you or you've never seen before, and just rest your attention there for 5 seconds. Really, really notice it. Okay, So you just noted. Anybody want to share what you saw? What'd you take a look at? Yes, Jennifer.
I chose the palm tree outside, and I just noticed how the wind was like so intricately waved in its palms.
Yes. So you a few seconds of really paying attention. So there's your concentration, choosing what to pay attention to. And the clarity was you noticed that it was moving, right? Your details. How about others? What did you note? Yes,
I
Rob.
was focused on the face of the Bodhisattva behind you, Hanyan, and noticing. I always notice this in the evening anyway when the light comes in, how beautiful it shines on her face, and also noticing all the detail, the red of her lips and the crown on her head, and just how beautiful it is. Yeah, all the details.
Yeah. So focusing on what you choose and tracking your experience, noticing the details. How about anybody else want to share what you saw?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I noticed the gold object, which I haven't noticed before, and the major thing that I noticed was the reflection of all the different areas of the room behind me.
Yes.
And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. And she's smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, when you think about it, the palm tree out there that's moving, the Buddha's face, the Bodhisattva's face, and the gold. You know, we would say these people are appreciating things that we could otherwise take for granted. You know, you can look at the tree. Oh, there's a tree. Oh, there's gold things. There's a statue back there. We do that all day long, but when we're mindful and we use this tool of noting, and it can be just a few seconds, that what happens is it opens up the world. I was telling Robin that when I began to do this particular, I practiced for over 50 years actually, but about 8 years ago I began to do this particular technique, these techniques. And what's happening now is I'm going back and watching movies and listening to music that I watched 20 years ago or heard. And what's happened, because I've increased my concentration, clarity, and equanimity, I'm really now experiencing for the first time. And it's almost like, you know, I'm seeing them for the first time ever. And for me, I get excited about it because in my old age, the world is opening up, you know? I wish I'd been able to do it when I was 20. Imagine a lifetime of really appreciating, you know, what we're experiencing. Can make all the difference in how we are human. So noting is very simply taking those few seconds of purposely paying attention. Okay? So we did see, let's do here. And you can either, remember there's here out and here in. So you can either listen to the sounds of the world, or pick a sound, or you could even say a word that you like, that's positive for you, you know, maybe peace, and silently hear it. So let's note hearing. Spend 5 to 10 seconds really listening. Okay, what did you hear?
Listening to my heartbeat.
Oh, how was that?
Perfect.
Perfect? Yeah, yeah, fantastic. I mean, I'm still here. Yeah. How about others? What else did you? Yes.
Hear the hum of the lights.
Yeah, yeah. Did anybody hear the sound of, I think it was a car, and did you notice that it wasn't one sound, it became several sounds? And maybe the hum of the lights, if you note the hum, it begins to be more than just one sound. That's the clarity. And again, when you're able to note with clarity, it opens the world up. Now, some people would say, what's the big deal hearing a car out there? Well, what can happen is as we develop these skills, our appreciation changes the way we experience it. So I was still working at Sharp, teaching mindfulness. During the pandemic, I taught on Zoom. And would you believe every Thursday during that class, the gardener would come with his leaf blower, just like clockwork, okay? And I use that as an example of how and I really would have my class, they thought I was crazy. I said, we're going to stop now and we're going to really do a hear out and note and label the leaf blower. And people would say afterwards, why would we want to do that? Isn't that the idea to get away from it and have peace and quiet? That's not equanimity. Equanimity is not fighting with it. It's bringing that skill to it of acceptance. And it doesn't mean that you can't go close a window or you can't just go away. That's fine too. But if you're stuck, and I couldn't exactly get up and leave Zoom and class to get away from the leaf blower. So what can happen is as you do these skills, it opens up what otherwise can be an unpleasant experience. You can open it up to be different. Maybe not pleasant, but it's not going to drive you crazy. I mentioned last week, how many people have tinnitus, ringing in the ear? Look at all the people that have it. Yeah, it's a really common, and it can be a terrible condition. I have it, my right ear. Matter of fact, right now, I hear this high-pitched ringing all the time. And, sometimes, and there's no cure for it. They've now got an external device that they're trying, but that's complicated. So what I learned to do was to use these skills with the ringing. I hear it right now. It's always there. Some people, people they come into my class and said, I've tried everything. And my doctor said the only thing to try is mindfulness because they've gone to psychologists to try to do cognitive behavioral and change it. They've, done medical workups, and for some people, nothing works. It's still always going to be there. And so then you can either learn the skill of equanimity, which is not fight with it. And then, for me, it's become this wonderful little friend. I know that sounds weird, but anytime I want to just stop and hear, I hear it right now. It's like a ringing of a bell. It's kind of pleasant, actually. So my mindfulness skill has transformed it, and I don't have to get away from it, and I don't have to hang on to it so that I can't do anything or live my life. It's just there. That's all it is. It's like the baby on the plane for Sylvia Boorstein was just there. It was how she related to it. So we can do see, and we can note what we see out or in, hear what we hear out or in. We can do that with feel as well. So let's do feel, what we call feel out, a sensation in your body. Bring your attention, just note some sensation in your body and hold it for, maybe 5 seconds. And now you can let it go. We can also do that with emotions. So the next time you're aware of an emotion, you can just spend those few seconds really being aware of it. What did you feel in your body? What did you know? Just
whatever I'm feeling doesn't stay put. There's motion in it.
So it's moving, it's flowing. Yeah. So that's an interesting observation. Yeah. How about others? What did you note? Yes.
My right big toe.
Your right baby toe. Really? Great.
Yeah, it's funny how when you don't think about it, you can't feel it, but when you do think about it, it's there.
Yes. That's real clarity, right? Yeah. Now, people could say, what's the big deal? Well, you're training your brain and your attention to go where you want it to go. That's really important. So noting is very simply that we spend a few seconds really paying attention to what we're experiencing, see, hear, or feel. What can help it is what we call labeling. And to keep things simple, we just use the 3 labels, see, hear, or feel. So, let's go back through it and use the labels. So bring your attention to something you see out in the room, and rest your attention there, and silently to yourself use the label see in a calm, kind tone of voice. See. 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 Okay. Be able to do it? Be able to hear yourself say see and pay attention? Did it enhance the experience at all? Did it? Yeah. Yeah, so as you use labels, it's like telling the brain, pay attention, I'm seeing right now. Pay attention, hear. Pay attention, feel. My right baby toe, okay? So labels can help a lot. And again, we can use the 3 labels, see, hear, or feel, for any of our experience. See out, the tanka on the wall. See in, visual thought, I can imagine something. Hear out, sounds in the world. Hear in, what I'm telling myself. And I can use the label here. It sort of sharpens the mind. And feel the same way. Just a very simple label of paying attention to what emotionally I'm feeling. That moment the friend says something that hurts, being able to note it, the feeling, and even say feel to yourself silently, it sharpens your attention. So let's go ahead and put it all together, and let's do a good 5 minutes of meditation using see, hear, or feel. And this will be a little different. We're going to use the sense experience, see, hear, feel. We're going to let our attention wander. And then when you notice, because the mind wanders, and that's not a problem, when you notice where it wanders to, note it and label it. So, for example, as we start, I may all of a sudden notice that my attention goes to the fan, see. And now it just wandered to my tinnitus here. And now I feel my left hand, feel. And now I feel my left hand again, feel. Now I hear the sound of the traffic, hear. Now I see you nodding your head, see. So wherever you allow your attention to wander, when you notice where it lands, note it, just a couple of seconds, and see if you can use the label, see, hear, or feel. Okay? So let's go ahead and try it. And this is the great thing, there's no distractions in this form of meditation. If we were doing another form, we'd say we got to wait till the siren stops, until all that noise goes away, or we're going to be distracted. No, we just listen to it. It becomes the object. Okay? So let's go ahead and do 5 minutes. Okay? And there'll be lots of opportunity for sense experience. So you can do this with eyes open or closed, whatever is comfortable for you. And maybe start with a couple deep breaths. Just bringing ourselves to the moment. And then when you're ready, allow your attention to wander freely, and wherever it lands, decide, see, hear, or feel, and use the label. And then let it go and notice where the attention goes next. And then repeat. So when you notice where your attention goes, use the label, see, hear, or feel. Spend those few seconds noting, and then let it go and notice where it goes next. And an additional instruction is to see if you can make the labels at a steady pace. So it might sound like this, and this is me meditating right now. Hear, see, hear, feel, see, and do that at your own steady pace. When you get distracted, that's normal, just come back to noting and labeling, see, hear, or feel. We'll do 2 more minutes. Okay, good work, buddy. So, we've got just a few minutes, but I'm curious, what did you experience? How was it?
One thing I noticed, and you and I had talked about it because I had asked a question, I've been doing this for the 3 weeks since you've been coming here, and it's really increased my awareness of my senses, and I feel more present in my body. One of my confusions was, okay, what about smell? So it's not see, hear, or feel. So, and I kept smelling something. So
Yeah.
like, oh, what am I going to do with that? Oh, feel.
Yeah.
I'm not really feeling anything except that I'm experiencing it in my body.
Right.
But so are you still with hearing? So I got into a little mental mind game with that.
Yeah.
So why is smell feel?
Well, just for convenience,
Okay.
that it's just, smell is a sense of the body.
Right.
So touch, smell,
And taste also,
sensation. I'm sorry?
Taste also?
Taste also,
Okay.
yes. So just out of convenience, because, if we came up with a label for every experience, it'd be too confusing. And the idea is that we can begin to just use that simple label and then open up to the experience. So, yeah. How about Joseph?
Yeah, my training's been in deep listening, deep looking deeply, and so labeling actually obscures the experience.
So labels are
It's something
optional.
that-
Yeah.
it's in the middle of it.
Yeah, and labels are optional. Some people don't need them and don't do well with them, but if for training, it's good to try them because you get lost in the experience. And when you use a label, particularly if you're moving between experiences, it keeps you on track. How about others? What did you experience? Yeah. Yes.
In the beginning, I was interrupting myself a lot. It felt really rapid. So I'd hear something, and while I was saying hear in my brain, then I was like, oh, I'm feeling something. And then, oh, I'm feeling something else.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing something else.
Yeah.
It felt very rapid, and then you started speaking, so then it slowed down a little bit. Then I got distracted. Then it started again. So it was just kind of like a wave.
Yeah, perfectly normal, perfectly normal. And that's why as you practice, particularly with the pacing of the labels, I am an anxious person, just by nature. But this practice helps me calm down when I'm really kind of spinning. When I just do, and I can do it anywhere. Nobody will even know I'm doing it. I can sit in the doctor's office with my eyes open, doing see, hear, feel. And when I do it at a steady pace, I just feel my body, my mind just calm down. So that's normal. And then the other thing is you're saying the label, but you're not paying attention to the label. It's not a here. Okay? Yeah. How about others? Somebody else back here. What did you experience? Jennifer?
It was weird. I just felt like freedom for some reason. It just felt really good. Maybe it's because I haven't been here in a while, but it's just like total freedom and peace and tranquility.
Yeah. That's one of the benefits, Not only do we appreciate what we're seeing, hearing, and feeling. I mean, I've always been a rock and roller, and I now am going to the symphony, and I'm really learning to appreciate classical music. When I go to the symphony, I really hear it. I was always too bored before. Just, I needed something. I needed the Rolling Stones to really connect to. But so it opens up your life in a whole different way. And by the way, I meant to say at the beginning, happy Juneteenth, happy Day of Freedom. That's what this holiday is about. I should have acknowledged that at the beginning. So, to respect our time, a couple suggestions. One is it's really good to get used to doing this with your eyes open. You can do it with it closed, and that helps. It kind of decreases the stimulation. But the value of learning to meditate with your eyes open, what do you think the value is?
It's life.
I'm saying?
That's life.
You can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, really, at Sharp, the doctors, nurses, I've taught, sometimes they come back and say, thank goodness, when I'm with a patient or I'm doing surgery, I'm really paying attention. I'm doing see, hear, feel with my eyes open. When you're driving, when you're listening to music, when you're listening to somebody you love, when you're eating. So what I would suggest this week, if you have a sitting practice where you sit and meditate, that's like going to the gym, do it. Try this, because you will develop skills. But equally important is when you remember, do a little see, hear, feel. See what it's like to do see, hear, feel when you're driving or you're working or whatever you're doing. Okay? So that's the home practice for this week. Next week, we're going to take these skills and look at an area that I think may cause us the most amount of suffering in our lives. Is we're going to look at mindfulness with these skills of the body, and that includes the emotions. Okay, and many of us have tinnitus or bad knees or pain. These skills can really help with equanimity, deal with what we can't control. So we'll do some experimenting next week on whatever you're bringing with your body, you can practice with it, okay? So thank you so much for coming tonight, and please come back, okay? See you next week.
Thank you.
And Steve's got, before you go, Steve's got...
What reason why you came?
That's right.
All right, everybody. Hello, I'm tonight's host, Stephen. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or leaders, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people with various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer is right up here, listed above the shoe rack. And let's see here, the full schedule is also on the website and also posted. We changed this up a little bit. Programs and everything. Everything we offer is free. I messed it up. It's Jeff here. I'm messing up because I'm like he's watching. So I have a need to please, and I got to let that go. Let's see here. If we have a lend while I bring it back. If you see a book, please feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Let's see here. And Dharma Bum Temple will be marching in the Pride Parade Saturday, July 20th. Please go to our website and click Pride Parade to sign up for the, see the flyer on the wall. Sign up in the flyer on the wall with a QR code. All right, last but not least, goodness gracious, get me out here. Please straighten your seats and your chairs as you head out. A few people can help me grab the windows here and get those closed. That'd be helpful. And thank you for being here. We wish you well.
Steve, can I just add one thing about the Pride Parade? That the new flyer that's out there has a